To wrap up our discussion on leadership styles, let's just look at a couple more definitions. We're going to look at the definition of transactional, transformational, charismatic, and visionary. So when we talk about leaders, we have what are called transactional leaders. Transactional leaders are leaders who guide or motivate their followers in the direction of established goals by clarifying role and task requirements. So when we look at transactional leaders, these are people who are very much focused on structure, order, and they've set out some clear expectations. They reward those who meet those expectations, and they're really focused on performance management. So if we think of transactional leaders, you can think of in sports, Vince Lombardi in terms of the Green Bay Packers. So with him, every practice was the same plays, every game the same plays. So we practice and practice until we get it right. We reward those who follow the set process. If we look at Bill Gates, he was more of a transactional leader. So he would go and look at the production process, design, and ask questions until he was sure that those who were working on a particular project really understood the process, the goals, and it was clear that they knew what needed to be done. So transactional leadership. The challenge with transactional leadership is it does tend to be a bit inflexible. The focus really here is on setting expectations and rewarding that, and then not really interfering with the process of your subordinates unless you have to deal with problems. We compare that to transformational leadership. So transformational leadership, instead of being focused on process and performance management, it's really focused on motivation and inspiration. So these are leaders who inspire their followers to transcend their own self-interest for the good of the organization, and they can have a profound and extraordinary effect on their followers. So to have transformational leadership, you must inspire people to share in your vision. You're winning over their hearts, so this is very emotionally driven. You are enabling others to act, challenging the process. So transformational leaders are those who tend to push for change, whereas transactional leaders, we talked about a second ago, were a bit more inflexible. So transformational leaders, essentially, if we look at some of our leaders of organizations that have somewhat of a cult following, they tend to be more of that transformational leadership. They are inspiring, they're motivating. We also find that transformational leaders tend to be seen as more effective leaders. There's lower turnover, so less of their workforce leaves. There's higher productivity and higher job satisfaction from their employees. When it comes to this transformational type of leadership, we can categorize them really as either charismatic leaders or visionary leaders. And it just really comes down to how are they motivating or inspiring people. So the visionary leader is motivating and inspiring people based on their vision. So they can create and articulate a realistic, credible, and attractive vision of the future that improves on the present situation that people are willing to buy into. And so we can see someone like Elon Musk, in terms of we're going to land people on Mars for 2025, his vision of the future people buy into. And so we can see that people follow his lead. They're inspired by him when it comes to electric vehicles, when it comes to space exploration. And so we can see that transformational leadership where he's inspiring the followers to transcend their own self-interest for the good of the organization. In comparison, the charismatic leader is one who is motivating or inspiring based on their personality. And so the Robbins textbook flags Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, as a charismatic leader. So a charismatic leader being someone who's enthusiastic, self-confident, whose personality and actions influence people to behave a certain way. And so when we look at those charismatic leaders, we're looking at someone who can deal with high uncertainty and stress, maybe not so concerned in terms of how other people's view them. You can see here Jeff Bezos' quote, "You have to be willing to be misunderstood if you're going to innovate." So both the charismatic and the visionary leaders, whether it's personality or whether it's what they see in terms of what the future looks like, can lead others to follow them as they lead. And here we're looking at, usually these are the individuals that are pushing for change. As we wrap up our discussion here on leadership, there's one more topic we want to talk about, which is leader-member exchange theory. So leader-member exchange theory says that when we have leaders, it does create what we call in-groups and out-groups. So the idea is that you have a number of employees who work for you, and some of your employees will become the in-group. So those in the in-group will have higher performance ratings, less turnover, greater job satisfaction. And who becomes the in-group versus the out-group? Well, the in-group members tend to be those who are chosen based on either similarity to the leader or based on competence, based on their performance. And so what happens is those who kind of align with the leader, that selective in-group, they have similarities in terms of their behaviors, and so they are the ones who get promoted. They are the ones who also have greater job satisfaction. Those who don't align with the leader in terms of characteristics, in terms of priorities, they're more of the out-group. So the leader chooses who kind of becomes the in-group in terms of who gets selected to do certain tasks and who gets promoted, but recognizing as well that the out-group is also based on the followers' characteristics, and that those who have similar characteristics to the leader tend to be in that in-group, and those who don't have similar characteristics tend to fall in that outer group, who will have less job satisfaction and maybe those with lower performance ratings. So as we look at leading an organization, we have to recognize that people are different and have different needs in terms of rewards, difference in terms of personalities. And so while we've been talking about leadership styles in terms of what might be more appropriate given the workforce more generically, given the situation more generically, people within an organization are quite diverse, and so they're all not going to fall into one category. And so as you choose your leadership styles, it will create an in-group and it will exclude others. And it will enhance the performance and lower the turnover and increase the job satisfaction of one group, but it can also alienate the other. So what we're going to do in our next couple of videos is look at how you lead a group in terms of how you lead teams, which can be different than leading the greater organization.